Yes, voice. I will tell you about the female reproductive system. This system is consisting of pair of ovaries, uterine tubes, a pair of the uterine tubes, also named as fallopian tubes, like this, and uterus and vagina. All these structures of female reproductive system, which I just narrated, they are present in the pelvic cavity. All these systems, which I just narrated, they are present inside the pelvic cavity. Some part of the female reproductive system, they are not present in the pelvic cavity. And this system, that is the parts of reproductive system which are not present inside the pelvic cavity, are functionally and developmentally related with the reproductive system. And these parts which are not present in pelvic cavity but are functionally and developmentally related with the female reproductive systems are mammary glands, a pair of the mammary glands, placenta, and umbilical cord. These are the parts which are not present in pelvic cavity. So, after knowing these different parts, then we will talk histologically with each part. As I told you first, a pair of ovaries. A pair of ovaries, look here, they are attached. This is the uterus. Attached with the uterus, when you will read in the cross, you will find there is a broad ligament of the uterus which is attached to its lateral border and upper part of the fallopian tube. So, the ovaries, they are attached to the posterolateral aspect of broad ligament of uterus, and they are covered by the peritoneal folds. And these peritoneal folds, they are attached to the broad ligament of the uterus. Or in short, you can say that a pair of the ovaries are present posterolateral aspect of the broad ligament of uterus. The broad ligament of uterus is attached above with this fallopian tube laterally to the side of the uterus and like this, flat. So, ovaries which are also covered by the peritoneum, the peritoneal folds of ovaries, they are attached with the broad ligament of uterus. Alright. This pair of the ovaries, it is covered superficially by the squamous epithelium, that is mesothelium. Below this mesothelium, the superficial surface of the ovary is lined by cuboidal epithelium. This cuboidal epithelium is misnomer. It is mentioned in the books as germinal epithelium, but it is not really germinal epithelium, not acting as a germinal epithelium. It is not produce any oocyte. Try to understand. The outer covering of the ovary is lined by cuboidal epithelial cells, and this cuboidal epithelium is called germinal epithelium. But this germinal epithelium is wrong word used here, because they are not produce any oocyte or ovum. Okay? So this thing should be clear. Books are mentioning it germinal epithelium, but it is not providing any oocyte. It is outermost covering of the ovary lined by cuboidal epithelial cells. Alright. Below this, there is a part of the connective tissue mass that is called tunica albuginea. When we see the transverse section of the ovary, under the microscope, what we find that it is dividing into the two parts, cortex part and medullary part. But there is no clear demarcation between the cortex part and medullary part. The reason for that, both are consisting of connective tissue. Cortex part is part of the dense connective tissue, the medullary part is of loose connective tissue. So there is no clear demarcation between them. Only the differentiation we can do by the presence of large number of the ovarian follicles. In cortex part, there is large number of the ovarian follicles. Look here, all these are the ovarian follicles, and the ovarian follicles, they are present in different stages of their development, starting from primordial follicles to the, you can see the corpus luteum, the everything, granulosum, like this. So all type of the follicles are present in the cortex part. The medullary part, which is rich in the elastic fibers, blood vessels, nerves and lymphatics. So that is the picture seen in the microscope. So very simple to identify the slide of ovary. But one thing I told you in the beginning, as the slide is very easy to identify, the biopsy is very difficult. Because you quickly identify the slide. Examiner also see and all right, start asking the questions. So the part of it, as I told you that it is showing the different stages of the follicles. Look here, this is the cortex part of the ovary. Here you are seeing some follicles are very smaller in size, some follicles are becoming larger in size, some follicles are showing the different stages and some are degenerated. So all type of the follicles, in different stages of the follicles you can see in the cortex part of the ovary. The follicles which are very smaller in size, these are the primordial follicles. These are the primordial follicles. The primordial follicles, under the influence of FSH, follicular stimulating hormone, the hormone secreted by FSH. So on the stimulation of secretion of the FSH, these primordial follicles, they enlarges in size, and this is called the primary oocyte. The primary oocyte further enlarges or increases in size by the further extent of the hormones, and the enlargements are seen in the oocyte also. Oocyte also increases in size. Look here, oocyte also increases in size, and this oocyte which is increasing in size, and surrounding this you are seeing this is the oocyte, and you can see it betterly here, the oocyte, and surrounding it you are seeing the part of granulosa cells. All these are the granulosa cells. एसी क्यों नहीं चल रहा? वो कह रहे चल रहा, मैंने कहा मेरे को नहीं लग रहा. So surrounding the granulosa cells, outside that is the part of follicular cells. So all these parts, they are seen present, and this primary oocyte, क्या मुसीबत है? आप दोनों बाहर चल जाइए. Get up, both of you, you and you. Go outside and do murmuring, whatever you want. Get up! Don't waste my time. As time, you will take more time. नोट करो इनका रोल नंबर नोट कर लो. Stop. Give your roll number and don't come in the Practical also. Very good. Also this. I don't understand why if you are coming in the class, why don't you try to understand? This primary oocyte, under the influence of hormones, it is increasing in size. When the oocyte increasing more, it is surrounding by the layers of glycoprotein. You can see here the layer of glycoprotein. This is the oocyte and this layer of glycoprotein surrounding it. This layer, it separates the oocyte from the surrounding part of the granulosa cells. See this diagram. This is the oocyte and surrounding it the zona pellucida or the glycoprotein layer, which separates it from the granulosa cells, dotted cells which are seen surrounding it. And at the same time, the stroma outside the granulosa cells also thickens. See this next diagram. And as the oocyte, which is surrounding by the zona pellucida, the next thing that in the granulosa is increasing in size, appears, or the fluid part appears in the part of granulosa cells. See this diagram and see this diagram. You are seeing here the empty spaces. These empty spaces are of the collection of the fluid. So the fluid collected in the part of granulosa cells. At the same time, this outer part, these cells, follicular cells, also thicken and they start differentiating into the theca interna and theca externa. Also dividing into the theca interna and theca externa. In the next part, the liquor folliculi which are collecting in the different species, now they start joining with each other. And the joining of these all fluid collection is called the antrum. Is called the antrum. As the antrum is formed, it is separating these follicular cells. Look here. All these are the granulosa cells. As this antrum is increased, it divides these granulosa cells into two parts, peripheral part and the part of the granulosa cells surrounding the oocyte. So, these follicles or granulosa cells, which is present along the periphery, they are named as membrana granulosa. And the part of the follicular cells which are over the oocyte, they are named as cumulus oophorus. I am talking of this. This is the cumulus oophorus and this is the membrana granulosa. And outside this is the part of theca interna, and more outside that is the part of theca externa. This stage of development of the follicle, this is called Graafian follicle, mature Graafian follicle. My dear boys, I am not already happy with your batch. And if you are repeatedly doing this activity, you can understand what will happen. Don't expect anything help from my side or any from my teacher. Why are you behaving like a kids, school kids? क्या नहीं चलेगा कि ऐसी? Now, listen and understand very important part. Up to the ovarian follicle, the oocyte is pass through the first meiotic phase, and it is completed its first meiotic phase up to the part of mature Graafian follicle. Afterwards, in the mature Graafian follicle, what are you seeing oocyte? That is the secondary oocyte. Is the secondary oocyte. I told you very simple thing. Before the formation of ovarian follicles, mature Graafian follicles, since from primordial follicles to the formation of mature Graafian follicles, मैडम वापस से टाइम देखते हो आप? चलो बैठ जाओ. Up to this stage, the part is it completed before formation of the Graafian follicle. The follicles are present in the first prophase of the first meiotic stage, first meiosis, and since from the beginning or in the fetal life to the formation of Graafian follicle, it remains into the prophase of meiosis first. In the fetal life, there is present primordial follicles to the all the part developmental stage of the follicles, and all these follicles they are remain in the meiosis first and prophase of the meiosis first, and further meiosis is restricted. It remain in the prophase of first meiosis, and this remain up to the ovulation. This remain up to the ovulation, and in the Graafian follicle, what we see, that is the secondary oocyte. जब meiosis नहीं हो रही तो primary रह गया. Understand? Because the meiosis is restricted in the later part and up to ovulation. After this, now what happened? That this antrum is increasing or the fluid mass is increasing. Due to increasing of the fluid mass, the ovary or the follicle is ruptured. Due to increasing amount of the fluids, the follicle is ruptured, and this is called ovulation. So oocyte comes out. As the oocyte comes out, what remains? Empty follicle. The wall of the empty follicle is thickened and folded. This wall, which is thickened and folded, is acting as an endocrine organ, and that is called corpus luteum. See this diagram, then I will come to the next. Look here, primordial follicles, and this primordial follicles forming the primary follicle. This primary follicle, as its granulosa part, follicular cells are increasing. This is the secondary follicles and like this, and further increasing of this. This is the mature Graafian follicle. Oocyte comes at the one end. Why it comes on the one end? Very simple. As the liquid is increasing, it is pushing the oocyte towards one end. And surrounding the oocyte, this is the part of cumulus oophorus. That is the cells of granulosa cells, which divides into two parts. And this is the membranous granulosa. And outside this, you are seeing this connective tissue mass. That is the part of luteal cells. And look this follicle. This is the corpus luteum. The oocyte comes out, the remaining part of the follicle thickened and folded, and this is called corpus luteum. So corpus luteum is the temporary endocrine organ. This corpus luteum depends upon its activity. If the released ovum is fertilized, then the corpus luteum persists for 4 to 5 months, and that is called corpus luteum of pregnancy. If ovum is not fertilized, then corpus luteum work as for 10 to 15 days. Another thing which is important, when we see the corpus luteum after its folding and thickening of its fibers, it is also showing the pigmented cells. The pigmented cells appear in the corpus luteum, and these pigmented cells are called lutein cells. So lutein cells, they are seen in the granulosa part, and lutein cells are also seen in the thicker part, peripheral part. And these lutein cells, गर्ल आपको मैंने कितनी बार कह दिया, जब पढ़ने का टाइम होता है, जब तो पढ़ती नहीं हो, और अभी किताब खोल के बैठी हो, अभी समझ लो, और you want to check me? Okay, carry on. Carry on. I don't like such foolish checks. I am pointed here in the diagram. You are concentrating on that part. Why don't you read this later on? Try to understand here at present why I am focusing this diagram. Very foolish checks. Look this here. I am telling you that lutein cells are of two types. Lutein cells which are present in the granulosa and lutein cells which are present in the thicker parts. So they are secreting the different hormones. The lutein cells of granulosa lutein cells, they are secreting the progesterone. And the lutein cells which are present in the theca interna part, which are producing the hormones, the estrogen. The theca externa part, that is disappears. That is all about the theory part or the gross part. Now come to this slide. Look here, the primordial follicles, the oocyte is very smaller in size, and they are surrounded by the squamous follicular cells. Look the diagram. Oocyte smaller in size, and surrounding them there is the follicular cells are squamous. In the next stage, the follicular cells becomes cuboidal, single layer of the cuboidal cells, and surrounding the oocyte you are seeing this pink color line, that is zona pellucida. So zona pellucida protects the oocyte from the surrounding follicular cells. Next to that, this part, look this diagram. The granulosa cells multiply, and due to their multiplication it becomes many layers, and surrounding them you are seeing the yellow color follicular cells, that is the part of theca part, and up to this stage this remain in the primary oocyte. There is no change in the oocyte. In the next stage, see here, the liquid or all the liquid appears in the granulosa cells, 1, 2, 3, like this, and oocyte remain in the same part. There is no further increase of the oocyte. Okay, carry on. I will not take your class on the next time. I can't tolerate such students. Now see the next. What happens? All these liquid folliculi, they join together here, and this part is called antrum. This antrum dividing these granulosa cells into peripheral part and the part of granulosa cells over the oocyte. See this part. Lying over the oocyte, this is the part of cumulus euphorus, and the resting the part, it is called membrana granulosa. At the same time, the follicular cells which are present outside this part of the oocyte, they are named as inner and outer part. The inner part is called theca interna and outer part is called theca externa. The theca externa is degenerate, while theca interna remain, and this theca interna along with the granulosa cells, theca interna along with the granular cells secreting the hormones. And this stage is called mature Graafian follicle. This mature Graafian follicles, due to increasing amount of antron, ruptured, and here see the next one. The oocyte is released. After releasing the oocyte, the rest of the part of the follicle, see here the theca externa, theca interna, and also the granular part. This is forming the corpus luteum. Next stage you can see here. This is theca interna, theca granular cells. They joined together and folded and now acting as a corpus luteum. And that corpus luteum, I have already told you, that is of two types, depending upon the further activities on the fertilization and not fertilization. The purpose of corpus luteum, they are secreting the hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. All these hormones are secreted by this. So that is the picture of ovary. Identification of the slide is very simple, and you must be ready to reply for different type of ovarian follicles, starting from the primordial follicles to this. Up to corpus luteum, and this I have told you. What happens? That there are multiple follicles. They start maturation, but all the follicles are not mature. In Graafian follicles, all the follicles are not mature. So the follicles which are not matured in the Graafian follicles, they degenerate or destroy. Such follicles which are not mature and degenerate, they are called atretic follicles. Atretic, A-T-R-E-T-R-I-C, atretic follicles. The follicles which do not develop and they degenerate, these degenerated follicles are called atretic follicles. Not attract, atretic. And at the same time, see, as the function of the corpus luteum complete, it is also converting into white mass. Whatever the condition, whether the corpus luteum of pregnancy or corpus luteum of menstruation, after their function is over, they converting into the white mass, and this white mass is called corpus albicans. This is the purely the mature Graafian follicle. This is the corpus luteum. All these are the lutein cells. What are the lutein cells? They are highly pigmented cells present in the granulosa. Now come to the next part of the reproductive system. A pair of muscular tube which is present on the superior surface of broad ligament of uterus. Fallopian tube, as I told you in the first diagram. This fallopian tube is having the different parts. It is about 10 to 12 centimeter long. The end of the fallopian tube which is inside the uterus, that is called intramural part. Just to the intramural part there is a constriction part of the fallopian tube, that is called isthmus. Then the fallopian tube is dilated, that is part infundibulum, and next to the infundibulum there are finger-like projections, that is called ampulla of the fallopian tube. And this finger-like projections of ampulla of the fallopian tube are remaining over the ovary. The function of uterine tube or fallopian tube, it is providing the nutrition to the ovary, to the ovum, or to the part of zygote. One thing, it is providing nutrition to the ovum or the zygote. Secondly, they also provide transport media. They also provide transport media to the both. That is the major part of fallopian tube. When we take the transverse section of fallopian tube, as I told you that it is about 10 to 12 centimeters long. When we take the transverse section of it, the transverse section of it is showing the manifolds. Girl, I know that you are not knowing anything. आप खड़े हो जाइए, आ जाइए, बैग उठा लीजिए अपना. Come on. And these students who I am making her or anyone out will not attend the further classes. Go. I will see that at present you are laughing. How many percent will laugh on you? Give your roll number. Give your roll number. And note down, they will not enter in any class now. So when we see the transverse section of fallopian tube, it is showing the large number of the folds. The long tube is having the three walls. The wall of the long tube is having the three coverings. Inside, innermost is the mucosa, muscle coat, and serosa. Serosa is mesothelium, that is lining by the squamous epithelial cells. Muscular coat is inner circular and outer longitudinal coat. The mucosa is very much folded and it is lined by columnar cells. The columnar cells may be ciliated and non-ciliated, both types. And whenever we are using the word non-ciliated, always say that they are secretive in function. If the columnar cells are non-ciliated, they are secretive in functions. If they are ciliated, they are helping in propelling the movements. So both type of cells are present. So very simple, when we see the transverse section, you will find such pictures. Large number of the mucosal folds. And these mucosal folds surrounding this lamina propria part, the lamina propria part is same, always having the part of lymphatics, blood vessels, nerves, and this. Inner muscle coat, and this inner muscle coat is the circular muscle fiber, and outer is longitudinal. That is the part of transverse section of fallopian tube. Next to that, important part, uterus. Uterus is a fibomuscular pear-shaped structure, and it is having the also three coats, and these are named as perimetrium, outer coat, perimetrium, middle coat, myometrium, innermost coat, endometrium. Same thing, serosa, muscle coat, and mucosa. Only the name is changed. So you can understand that myometrium word is for uterus, endometrium word for mucosa of the uterus. So this part of the uterus, when you will read in the gross, you will find that it is a fundus part, body part, and cervix part. All these are the different part of the uterus. All right, I will talk about the histology part. The mucosal part or the endometrium part of the uterus is dividing into two parts. Upper 2/3 part, that is called endometrium functionalis part. Functionalis endometrium, that is upper 2/3 part. Lower 1/3 part of endometrium is basilic part, endometrium basili. The reason is The upper two-third part, which we named as stratum functionalis, that undergoes the action of hormones. It goes under the action of the hormones and it is changing by the action of the hormones or different stages. It disappear, it lost during the menstruation period and all that. So at the functionalist part, it is undergoing the hormonal changes and that is also lost in the part of menstruation. The stratum basale part, it remains intact. There is no change in the stratum basale part. Clear this thing in your mind. Second thing, the blood supply of stratum functionalis part is spiral in shape. Very important, and it is commonly asked by anatomists. What is the blood supply of functionalis part? The blood supply of functionalis parts, they are not straight. They are spiral in shape. While the blood supply of stratum basale part is straight. That is the reason during menstruation the spiral arteries they rupture and that is cause of all the menstrual period. So these are the changes which are seen grossly. When we see the section of the uterus under the microscope, we will show you the slide of menstruation phase, the part of the proliferative phase, and the third is part of the secretive phase. We will show you the three slides of uterus. The slide of uterus in menstruation phase is showing the blood mass besides the other thing. And in secretive phase, the uterine glands are tortuous. While in proliferative phase, uterine glands are straight. This is the basic point. Keep in your minds. I am coming to the rest of the parts. Now look the diagram. The epithelium of the endometrium is very simple columnar epithelium. The simple columnar epithelium, and this simple columnar epithelium is lying below it the part of lamina propria part of uterus, which is consisting of loose connective tissue, blood vessels, nerves, and all this. Besides this, you can see the large number of these structures. These are the uterine glands. These are the uterine glands. So, the lamina propria part is showing the blood vessels, nerves, and also the uterine glands. Below this, look the myometrium part. The myometrium part is consisting of smooth muscle fibers, and these smooth muscle fibers in all directions. They are circular, they are longitudinal, and they are oblique. Last is serosa. Very simple, that is lined by the squamous epithelium or continued with the mesothelium. That is the general picture of uterus. Simple columnar epithelium, lamina propria is showing the large number of the uterine glands, blood vessels, nerves, and lymphatics, and muscle coat, all the direction of the smooth muscle fibers, whether oblique, circular, or like that. Now see one by one. Look this part. Epithelium is same, no change. Is there any change in the glands? The uterine glands, see the uterine glands, they become tortuous, elongated and tortuous. Why? बताओ, यूज बोलो क्यों tortuous हो गई? इतना सोचने की बात नहीं है. Which stage? Secretion. जब ग्लैंड में secretion बढ़ जाएंगे तो क्या होगा? बड़ी नहीं हो जाएगी, tortuous नहीं हो जाएगी. Very simple. So this is the secretive stage. In case of secretive phase, you will see the tortuous and elongated uterine glands. And rest of the thing are same, no change. So what you will see, to differentiate whether the proliferative phase, secretive phase, see the part of lamina propria. And in the lamina propria, the part is uterine glands. Look here. Here you are simply seeing the columnar epithelium and uterine glands shorter in size, no tortuosity, and large number of the glands are seen, muscle coat and everything. So this is the proliferative phase. And menses, very simple, there is blood mass extra. So that is the slide of uterus. Next is vagina. In the case of vagina, you will find that epithelium is stratified, squamous, non-chitinized. Below that, the part lamina propria part, blood vessels, nerves, lymphatics. But keep one thing in your mind and underline that, no glands. Underline that, no glands. And this is commonly asked. And the student replies, sir, glands? No. This is kept moist by the secretion of the glands present at the cervical part of vagina. Cervical part of the uterus, there is the glands present and that glands kept it moist. Otherwise, there is no glands in it. I am quoting this because this is commonly asked. Otherwise, the rest of the picture, muscle coat and this same. The other important part, the lamina propria part is rich in the elastic fibers. Lamina propria part is rich in the elastic fibers. Then I come to the part of mammary glands. The mammary glands is a pair of apocrine glands, and each gland is having the 15 to 20 lobes. 15 to 20 lobes, and in each lobe there is present the part of ducts and glandular alveoli, which are secreting the milk. So 15 to 20 lobes, and there are present the large number of the glands. Each gland is secreting the milk through the duct that is called lactiferous duct, and this lactiferous duct are openings in the nipple. Surrounding the part of the alveoli, look this part, surrounding the alveoli, all these are the alveoli and the duct. You can see here, this duct which is showing the milk, and that milk is taken the stain, looking pink. So alveoli and ducts, and these are surrounding by the connective tissue mass and the smooth muscle fibers. In this connective tissue mass, there is present the plasma cell also. I will use this plasma cell again. At present, you understand where the plasma cells are present. Surrounding the alveoli or the ducts, in the connective tissue mass, there is present the plasma cells and also the fat cells. But the plasma cells are important. They are secreting the IgA. And that IgA mixed with the colostrum, and the colostrum is the first milk. And I hope that is providing immunity to the fetus. That is why the doctor are advising that the breast milk is very important for the fetus, because this immunity is provided by the mother's milk, IgA. and this IgA is secreted by the plasma cells, and these plasma cells are present in the connective tissue mass. Alright. The slide of mammary gland, when we focus the slide, you will see such type of the picture. The large number of the alveoli. Alveoli are lined by the cuboidal epithelial cells. Duct. Duct, depending upon the duct. Duct may be lined by the stratified columnar epithelium if it is large. If it is small, it is lined by the simple columnar cells. Look here, duct. You are seeing the two ducts. One is this. This is lined by the stratified columnar epithelium. इसकी दिख रही है आपको? ठीक है? Wall. See this duct. The wall of this duct is thickened, and see this duct. This is interlobular duct. It is lined by the cuboidal epithelium. So, basic point. When we see the slide of mammary gland under the microscope, you will find the lobules, one lobule, another lobule, like this. Each lobule are surrounded by the connective tissue mass and smooth muscle fibers. These smooth muscle fibers and connective tissue mass are containing the fat cells called adipocytes. These are the fat cells. Besides that, you will also find there the nerve fibers, lymphatics, and plasma cells. And in the lobule, you will find the alveoli, which are lined by the cuboidal epithelial cells, and the duct. Duct may be interlobular duct or intralobular duct. So that is the picture of. All right, but still we have the problem. How we can say that this is the mammary gland? One thing clear in your mind. See alveoli, ducts, and secretion will always be there. That will stain. H&T stain give the pink color. Okay. So then see the surrounding part. Very good amount of muscle fiber, fat cells, and all these. By this you can identify that this is the mammary gland. But still there is the problem. The teacher will ask you whether it is lactating phase or in resting phase. See the two diagrams. In lactating phase, the cells are very active. In lactating phase, the cells are very active, and milk secretion will be seen in all the alveoli and ducts in the lactating phase. So, compare the two. Have you noticed the one point? I want from your side. You will be future doctor. See that, compare the two diagrams immediately. I am not satisfied. See other point. क्या? ग्रॉस पिक्चर क्या दिख रही है आपको, वो देखिए ना पहले. Why don't you note down the point? Here the connective tissue mass and smooth muscle fiber are more. Here the alveoli and the glands are more. Try to understand. In proliferative phase or in resting phase, inactive stage, the mammary glands will show the smaller size of the alveoli and ducts. The interlobular connective tissue mass is thickened. That is in resting stage. And if the glands and the ducts are increasing more in size, the interlobular connective tissue mass is less. That is lactating mammary gland. So keep this point in your, that is important point. Compare the connective tissue mass. Interlobular connective tissue mass is less. That is resting phase. And if the connective tissue mass is decreased, glands are more, it is lactating phase. Okay. And the hormone secreted by it, अभी बताया मैंने. IgA, that is coming from the plasma cell and mixed with the colostrum to provide the immunity to the fetus. Now the another thing, placenta. The placenta is the organ, temporary organ, which connects the fetal blood vessels to the mother blood vessels. Placenta is a temporary organ which connects the fetal blood vessels, which are the branches of umbilical arteries, to the mother blood vessels. So providing the nutrition and also help in the excretion of fetal excretion, all these. So that is the placenta. It is having the development from the two parts, membranous part, that is decidua basalis of the uterus. As this organ is connecting the two parts, fetus with the mother, that is fetal blood vessels to the mother blood vessels. So development is also from the two points. The part, one part which is developing from the uterus, and which part of uterus, that is endometrium, and which part of that part of the endometrium is called decidua basalis. So this is decidua basalis. And fetal part which is developing, that is called chorion. That is called chorion. So placenta is having the two parts, chorion and the decidua basalis. When we take the transverse section of the placenta, we will find the large number of the chorionic villi. See here, ये दिख रही है आपको structures? All these are the chorionic villi. All these are the chorionic villi. And lying between the chorionic villi, you are seeing the yellowish color bunches. Between the chorionic villi, you are seeing the yellow color bunches, and these yellow color bunches are maternal blood cells. These are maternal blood cells. So identification of placenta is very simple. You will find the large number of the chorionic villi. Okay, no problem. And between the chorionic villi, you are seeing the yellowish color masses. These are the maternal RBC. Okay, surrounding this hole, there is a part of the connective tissue mass and this. And we know that what is present in the connective tissue mass, blood vessels and all that. So identification is very simple. But now the viva is important. Alright, we know the chorionic villus. Lying in the center of chorionic villus, there is present the part of, no diagram. There is a part of the connective tissue mass. And lying here, there is present the blood vessels and this. The important part, the chorionic villi is surrounding by the layer of cuboidal epithelium. Okay, don't go in detail, you just remain here because I have already, you will see the 7 slides in the fetus female reproductive system. So take it simple. What is the function that I will tell you just now, placenta, and identification of the placenta is, you will see there the large number of the chorionic villi, and surrounding the chorionic villi there is present the maternal RBC. The function of placenta, it is secreting the hormone estrogen, progesterone and HCG. The next slide, umbilical cord. Umbilical cord connects the placenta with the fetus. And this umbilical cord, it is having the very simple to identification. When we focus the slide of umbilical cord, it will show the picture, two rounded structure above and one rounded structure below. The umbilical arteries, that is, these two structures are umbilical arteries, and the one structure that is umbilical vein. Okay. Surrounding this, the part of the muscle coat and covering the part of jelly. Now the question asks you, because the slide is very simple. If you find such picture that two umbilical arteries and one umbilical vein, nothing than the umbilical cord. Okay? इसमें और कुछ मत बोल देना. There is nothing besides the umbilical cord. Because in the last class of histology yesterday, when I focused the slide over the screen, all the students say hyaline cartilage to different type of male reproductive cells. Don't worry. Everyone can do the mistake, but keep one thing in your mind. If you find such picture, two umbilical arteries and one umbilical vein, that is umbilical cord. Now the question asks you, umbilical arteries are carrying which type of blood? Yes. And umbilical vein is the oxygenated blood. So don't forget this thing. Another thing, on the surrounding part of these two, there is the liquid fluid which is mixed with the dense connective tissue mass, and this is called Wharton's jelly. That is called Wharton's jelly. So that is all about the female reproductive system. You have done in your physiology the menstrual phase of uterus is due to what condition of the hormones?